Hello everyone and welcome to the penultimate session on the Smart Stage Day 2 at Event Tech Live US and Canada. I am joined by Jeff, the Chief Technology Officer and President at Softjourn, as well as Lyubomyr, Head of the Solution Department, also from Softjourn. Jeff, Lyubomyr, welcome to today's session.
Hello. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks.
So the session, Checkerboard Seating, a new reality when venues open, something I'm sure is at the top of everybody's priority list, figuring out how to seat people. I know you guys got a lot of details about how you might go about that and how you can overcome those challenges. So I'll give you the floor over to you. Look forward to hearing from you during this presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jeff Kreuser. I'm president and CTO at Softjourn. Softjourn is an engineering services company, and we work with ticketing providers all over the world, providing engineering services and solutions. With me is, I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, yeah, my name is Lyubomyr, and I'm a solution architect at Softjourn. Yeah, working with ticketing projects for a long time.
All right, thank you, Lyubomyr. So today we're going to talk about social distancing and different ways that ticketing providers go about doing social distancing. So we're going to talk a little bit about how some data can be used to do that. Some of the social distancing is done manually. Putting two groups of twos, threes, fours, whatever together. Some of the capacity is defined by local regulations, and so that can vary widely as to how many people you're actually allowed to have at an event. 20%, 25% seems to kind of be the average, at least from what I've seen. And then we're also going to talk about some other ways that social distance seating can be done, and that's more dynamically. So, and part of the reason for that is to try to maximize capacity. So, if, for instance, if you do it manually, you can only do so many seats, but if you actually do it dynamically, you can fit more people in there, and some of the pros and cons to doing both methods, as well as some of the advantages and disadvantages for clients. So, and one other thing is that, usually there's a predefined way. So obviously someone goes to buy a ticket, and what you see is that you go to pick your seats, and they're already pre-selected. All the seats that are required to do proper social distancing are blocked off, and you're forced to do, pick accordingly. And then dynamic seat allocation, which I just touched upon before. There's kind of two ways of doing it. One is delayed. So just before the event, you go and do a best fit algorithm to allocate all those seats according to who has bought tickets. And but then there's another way of doing that at time of purchase. Okay. So get my clicker back. So once again, predefined venue seating chart. So, some of the inputs in order to do this. So here we have an example, just a very simple group of seats. It has a capacity of, in this case, just 488. It shows a 23% utilization. And here we have groups of, we just did this. We have groups of 1, 2, 3s, up to 6s. So inputs to this would be obviously capacity. What's the percentage that you're allowed to have? Historical data. That's used to define probably, groupings, right? So maybe different events, different shows, different sporting events have different common numbers of tickets that are sold, whether it's 2s, 4s, whatever kind of thing. And so you can use that too to help determine how many of different size groups you want, right? And then of course, what the capacity is, how many seats you have, also comes into how far apart you have to be. And once again, that comes down to some local items and what those regulations are. So what are some of the pros and cons of doing predefined venue seating? Obviously, a pro is that it's easy to implement. You don't really require any software changes in the ticketing system. You can do this all manually and set that up and duplicate it from event to event quite simply. So cons. Usually you wind up with a lower capacity. The utilization is going to be less than if you can do something dynamically. Uh, and sometimes that happens with not only the fact that you're making a best guess at the groupings and how that works, but you can also run into problems where available seating becomes underutilized. So you sell out all your groupings of 2, but now you have people coming who want only 2 seats. So what do? You sell only those 2 seats? Do you some places make you buy all 4 seats for only 2, or you don't go, that kind of thing. And of course that leads to some reduced patron satisfaction because a group may need to split up or sit in locations that they would not find as desirable as if this was done dynamically, or they could pick their seats at purchase time. So dynamic seat allocation is something different, right? So it's in this case, we're talking about you delay it to as close as possible to the event start date. So what you're doing is you're taking all those different sales and you're grouping them together. And so when you're doing that, you're doing some better utilization. So there's the possibility you could actually have some more seats available. You're putting the groups together, you're maximizing that capacity. Obviously, the cons here is that it requires changes to how you do your ticket sales. Patrons may not know exactly where they're going to be sitting. They might be given a general area, but that doesn't mean that they know exactly where they might have to want to sit or where they might be sitting. It requires some tools and some data, once again, to be built into the ticketing system in order to kind of do this algorithm and do the seating. You can do it manually, but it definitely is not an easy task to accomplish. And then the other thing here is that you actually might sell some more seats than you can actually accommodate, and that's happened before too. So, okay, Lyubomyr.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, Jeff mentioned about one option for dynamic seats. I can elaborate on the second option. So let me go to the next slide. So, oh, it's too far away. Okay, here it is. So the time of purchase. So with this option, the venue seating chart will be presented to the patron with all available seats and without social distance. But once a patron has chosen their seat, all the surrounding seats are blocked to create a social distance, like we see in the animation. This can be achieved via changes in the best available algorithm or in the pick your own seats tool. There can be different options defined to create a safe zone. So the most common are number of rows in front or behind the selected seats and number of seats on the left and on the right. Those seats become unavailable for the next patrons buying tickets. As a result, we have a better capacity utilization as seats are booked by patrons' request. Good user experience as patrons know where they will sit, and there is no need for event organizer staff to be involved in seating arrangement. At the same time, to achieve this, a ticketing system must adopt the technology change in the pick your own seats or best available algorithm functions. Okay, so now let's look at the side-by-side comparison of the static versus dynamic methods. As we can see, with an equal number of seats on each side, we have more inventory left on the right due to more efficient capacity utilization. And this is for the case that all seats defined on the left will be sold. Chances are that some seats will not be purchased or purchased partially if ticketing system allows that. So the real difference may be even bigger. As you can see now, on the left, there are some seats in green that may not be purchased or will cause an additional revenue loss for event organizer. Okay, well, now I will pass you over again to Jeff to discuss the additional aspects of the event planning with social distance.
Yeah, one of the things too is that Lyubomyr, did you have anything to add on the dynamic seat, the delayed allocation? I had talked about that a little bit. Did you have anything to add on that area?
Well, yeah, basically we covered it, how this works. I can just say that, the overall idea is just to delay the allocation process as close to the event start date, so that event organizer knows more about who is coming to the event. So they can, try to, like we have talked for the static allocation, right? They try to guess that based on some historical data and some forecasting, right? With the delay, they kind of know already who has purchased the tickets, what group size is, and they know how many twos and how many threes and fours and so on will be coming to the event. So this is more like real data that they can play with. They can arrange it on the map. But as Jeff mentioned, that requires some efforts, obviously. So you need really to then have this list of orders and kind of try to put them on the map and see where you can feed them, take into account all the social distance rules, all the other factors. So maybe you would like to kind of check, okay, here are my donors or VIP members, and I will put them more, give them a little bit better seats, or maybe I will rearrange based on the group size or other factors. So that is, a little bit, time-consuming task, and it's not ideal, obviously, because you can plan the seating allocation, but then the customers may not like it, or you can end up, as we also mentioned, that due to social regulations, you may not fit all the ticket buyers that were interested in going to this event. So yeah, and this option, like I just talked about, the time of purchase allocation kind of handles all of that, because this is more like dynamic way, right? You select your seat, you see the safe zone created automatically, and that is more efficient from one point and less frustrating for the customers on the other side. So yeah, just to add. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Lyubomyr. Yeah, so here at Softjourn, as a technology engineering provider, we have our own reserve seating tool that we license. And one of the things we did earlier on, when it was recognized that this was going to need to happen, is that we took the best seat algorithm that the tool used and modified that, adding some parameters to allow for taking out of inventory. So when you said, okay, show me the two best seats that I can purchase in this section and this price range, it would go in there. It would look at can I allow aisle seats, or do I have to leave aisle seats open in order to create that distance for people going up and down the aisle? How many one row, 2 rows? How many rows do I have to skip in order to create that distance, as well as the number of seats in between? And so that tool was modified so that it could be configurable to allow that distancing, and modify that as needed, and then automatically block those seats out as the algorithm went and pick seats, and that way it made it much more friendly for users to obviously be able to decide kind of where they wanted to sit, much easier, and instead of being forced into different groups or whatever, or into different seating areas because, oh, okay, you can't do 2 seats here or 1 seat there. It also helped with that configuration. So, and as we've shown here, it also does help maximize, because it optimizes as you sell. So that's the other thing that's a big advantage to doing it dynamically. So so one of the other things we just kind of like to just touch base on is that, obviously, social distancing is not the only thing that's come up here. There are many other things that have to be looked at in holding live events more and more, and I'm sure most of us have all heard about these things, or discussed them in many different ways. So, but I just kind of like to, as a wrap up here, touch on a couple of these things. So, some of them is obviously access control. And a lot of these things come out of things that we've been talking with, or clients of ours, or other conversations that we had with people in the ticketing industry. So access control. So a lot of that was how do you do that without, it used to be, you have a device, and I'm going to stand next in the doorway, and everybody's going to come through, and I'm going to scan you. Well, now you don't want to be that close. You still want to keep that social distance. So a lot of interest was put into pedestals where one person can stand back, watch it. It's very obvious if they're allowed to enter or exit. And and not only that, but one person can watch multiple pedestals. So we've done quite a bit of work with companies who've taken and invested in more of the pedestals for use in access control. Timed entry and exit, that's something that's been discussed in order to keep groups down and queues down. Making sure that people are coming in at the right time and leaving. So, obviously the use of virtual or hybrid events. So that's also, not only are you going to sell live tickets, but you're probably still going to want to try to do some kind of online or virtual um, service too, or some kind of capability there, just for the fact that if you're limited in capacity, many times it's still going to uh, you know be advantageous to offer a virtual view of that in order to increase revenues. Health screening, obviously that's important, and that's going to vary widely on what part of the world you're in and what's allowed by local law or local regulations. So some of that might be, checking and requiring tests before the event, coming into the event, providing some kind of vaccination document, in order to, be allowed. So, I mean, some places are going vaccination only and that kind of thing. Contact tracing, obviously, still very important, even as the rates of vaccination go up and things are opening more. Because if there is some kind of number of people that have an outbreak, you're going to definitely want to let people know. One of the things that I think COVID-19 has made more obvious is the need to communicate with patrons and fans more and more, and keep that up. And I think that's going to continue going forward. Another thing is in-seat contactless food ordering and delivery. I think that's here to stay and is only going to grow. of a vaccine registry check. So what is that going to involve? And we're talking about passports, app tracking, all that. And then once again, security. Obviously, how do you handle people that don't want to or abide by the rules? And unfortunately, that's definitely a given, and so that's still going to be important moving forward. So anyway, I'd like to thank you. And once again, I'm Jeff Kreuser, and with me today was Lyubomyr. And we'd certainly like to hear any questions or have any discussion with anybody. If there is questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Yes, we do have some questions.
All
The
right.
first question that we have here is around historical data. You mentioned that to make this work, or part of the input that was needed or would be beneficial was the historical data. Just how much historical data is needed in context? Is it just one previous year? Does it work on previous months? How does that element of it work?
It's using data. So as I'd mentioned, you can see patterns in different shows as to what are the groupings that people are buying, right? So matinees might have a different purchase pattern than a evening show or a Friday night show. A Sunday afternoon show obviously is going to be different. And so what you want to do is when you're planning, if you're going to pre-plan your seats, you're going to want to use that data. And you could just use previous year data. You can, it depends on how easy it is to get that data and how easy it is to group that data into the information you need. But even just having a handful of shows where you can at least have an idea of what size groupings you should do is better than just randomly going and saying, okay, I'm going to do 10 twos and 10 fours and how many sixes kind of thing, because you're just going to limit yourself there. I mean, if you can look and say, oh, for this show, for matinees, we sell mainly larger family style kind of things where we're doing fours and sixes. But for a Friday night, we're getting the people going, couples going out to dinner or something like that and doing that kind of thing. So I think that's helps you maximize your capacity. So of course you can, in our example of the dynamic, we showed you could get more people in, but once again, it depends. Local regulations, you might be limited on percentage. So.
Okay, awesome.
I can just...
Yeah, absolutely. You go.
I just want to add that basically, we're talking like about the accuracy of this, right? So the more data we have, then the better accuracy we can get. Obviously, it's still forecast. It's just trying to analyze what your historical data, are, what you have in your historical records, and then trying to forecast it to your event. And here, really, it's more about the amount of data, the structure, how structured they are, what attributes of this data you can capture, like the type of event, the date, the time, all the venue, all the different attributes of the event, and then trying to project them to the event you're trying to build the optimal seat allocation, right?
Okay, awesome. I think that there's that brings us kind of onto the next question, and I must apologise because it's a very short question, so I'm going to try and elaborate on it, maybe thinking about where they're going with it. They've asked about dynamic pricing. They've just put dynamic pricing question mark, and I'm assuming they're asking, does your solution or the way that your technology works, the way that you've built this, enable them to have some kind of dynamic pricing based on people maybe booking in smaller or larger groupings depending on seating patterns and things like that. I'm reaching a little bit there, but that's kind of maybe where I think that question's going.
Well, yeah, usually dynamic pricing comes in on, you're trying to price for demand, right? And and that might be the fact that if you're still going to have to do social distancing, but people are say everybody's vaccinated, the demand might be there, and you may be able to do that. I personally think, do you necessarily want to do that right now? It might not be the best thing to try to go, well, wait a minute, I went yesterday and looked for tickets and I saw there were quite a few available. Now I go back today and the price is twice as much or something like that. I think right now, I think butts and seats might be a better way to do it than, I know the revenue part's important, but at least kind of from my view of things, I would think that it might be a better idea just to do that. But just because you have to social distance and you have to limit the seating, there's nothing stopping you from doing any kind of dynamic pricing. Our solution does not include that. It's that. I mean, there's different ways to do it. I mean, I know people that do it manually. I know people that, go and get a service that, there's lots of third parties out there that'll help you do it too. I mean, we've worked with some people too in order to implement different algorithms. But they're two different things. I mean, you can use them in combination, but right now I think, I don't know if I would look at that myself.
Yeah, there's some interesting pricing strategies going out at the moment. There was an article in the news story this week of an event promoter that was doing, I think it was like $19 for vaccinated and $999 for non-vaccinated people. Like that was like that's either a really clever, lucrative thing to do.
That's interesting. Or you could go the other way. Or I'll, show up vaccinated and we'll give you something free, whatever, a reward or something like that. So, different ways to persuade people into it.
Yeah, I've seen certain states in America are kind of putting incentives right for people to get vaccinated. So maybe that is a strategy from an event promoter's point of view as well.
Yeah. Well, different places have gone to actually lotteries. So every week they've been doing a lottery for if you get vaccinated this week, you're automatically entered. I live in California. They've actually set money aside to reward people that both are in the process of getting vaccinated for a lottery, and for people that went and did it already. So so far I haven't won anything, but hopefully.
Hey, listen, it's being it to win it is better than nothing, I guess. It's
right. I mean, California's going to be unique, and they were going to actually include the people that had gone and done it already. So,
I think that's a fair approach, though, right? I think that's a fair approach.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, there's one final question that I have here. You mentioned in your presentation delayed allocation, and you mentioned obviously doing that as close to the event as possible. But the question here is like, how close to the event is that feasibly possible? Is it like a day? Is it like 24 hours? Is it further out than that?
Yeah, for the dynamic allocation where you do it just in that bulk, it's not at purchase time, right? You would probably do that at 24 hours ahead of time, so people know where they're going to be and where they're going to be sitting, and if you've sold out or if you oversold, you're going to have to do a refund, because that's a possibility, right? That could happen if you leave it to go that long, or you can wind up with still some available seats, but that's not necessarily the worst thing if you can sell them or take advantage of it. So, Lyubomyr, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just want to add that it may also depend on the size of the venue and the tools available. Because if it's all manual work and and the venue is quite big, you may need more time to process that information and kind of put everyone on the great spot. But if there are some tools available, maybe some ways to automate that, then maybe it will be easier process. But need to evaluate all this aspects.
Yeah, that's a good thing to mention. It really depends on what the ticketing system offers too. If they offer some kind of automation for doing that, obviously it's going to be much easier. So,
Awesome, guys. Well, Jeff, Lyubomyr, thank you very much for presenting this new way of approaching this challenging thing that we now face as an industry. For anybody watching now or on demand that wants to reach out to Jeff and Lyubomyr, please do reach out to them on the platform or follow up with them after this event. Jeff and Lyubomyr, thanks once again for joining me, and to the attendees, we'll see you shortly in the last session of the day.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.